Hello and welcome. This is from the CBN. We'll bring to you weekly reports and expert analysis of the actions, policies, and economic initiatives of the Central Bank of Nigeria. I am Oluyemisi Dada. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria met earlier this week in the light of waning optimism for a robust rebound in global recovery caused by the persistence of the COVID-19 pandemic and emergence of new variants of the virus, continued supply bottlenecks, global inflationary pressures, and the beginning of monetary policy normalization by some major central banks. The committee, by a unanimous vote, decided to keep interest rates unchanged at 11.5%, along with all other policy parameters. We have more on that today, plus interview with an economist on the outcome of the first MPC meeting of the year. Stay tuned, we'll be back shortly. At the MPC meeting press briefing last Tuesday, the committee stated that the broad outlook for recovery in both the global and domestic economies remain clouded with uncertainty. Headline inflation is expected to trend marginally upwards in the short term before moderating towards the end of March as food harvests progress, improving food supply. The Central Bank of Nigeria forecast a 2.86% economic growth for the country, 4.2% forecast by the federal government, and a 2.76% by the International Monetary Fund, IMF.
On price development, members continue to express concerns about the impact of insecurity in farming communities on food inflation. Whereas headline inflation had been moderating for several months, committee believed that its recent uptick was associated with increased demand during the festive season and was thus of the view that the prices will return to the downward trajectory given the bank's ongoing interventions in the agricultural sector. On this note, members applauded the efforts of the bank with the recent launch of the rice pyramids, noting that these efforts to increase food supply and stem food inflation were in the right direction. Members, however, reiterated the key role of the federal government in providing the necessary security around the country, and particularly in the farming communities, to ensure that farmers and their produce remain safe and food supply is both boosted and uninterrupted. Committee also noted that the ongoing dry season farming will further improve food supply and dampen prices.
The MPC noted the rising government debt profile, concentration of the funding sources, and its implications for fiscal sustainability and macroeconomic stability, including its impact on financial system performance and growth.
MPC continued to urge the government on the need to harness other sources of revenue to reduce its dependence on oil as a single revenue source. In addition, it reiterated the need for government to seek alternative and more viable and indeed more efficient infrastructure financing sources in order to ease its expenditure burden. To this end, members called on the fiscal authorities to take advantage of the private sector-driven vehicle for the Infrastructure Corporation of Nigeria in order to transfer viable infrastructure projects for consideration by the corporation, as this would ease pressure on government in its drive to raise revenue through taxes from an already burdened private sector and household sector.
In its final consideration, the MPC was clear that a loosening option would trigger excess liquidity and fuel inflationary pressure, while a tightening option could truncate the steady improvement in credit performance, including other financial soundness indicators.
After a careful balancing of the benefits and downside risks of each policy option, MPC decided to hold all policy parameters constant, believing that a hold stance will enable the continued permeation of current policy measures in supporting the recorded growth recovery and further boost production and productivity, which would ultimately rein in inflation in the short to medium term. The committee thus decided by a unanimous vote to retain monetary policy MPR at 11.5%. In summary, MPC voted to retain 1. MPR at 11.5%, 2. Retain the asymmetric corridor at plus 100 and minus 700 basis points around the MPR, 3. retain a CRR at 27.5%, and 4, retain liquidity ratio at 30%.
North, South, East or West, male or female, old school or millennial, rural or urban, the Naira is the same, and so is the e-Naira. The e-Naira is a legal tender issued by the Central Bank of Nigeria. So, let's embrace it. The e-Naira will foster financial inclusion, improve access to credit, facilitate cross-border remittances, and it's easier to transfer. E-Naira, same Naira, more possibilities. This message is from the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN.
Thanks for tuning in. This is from the CBN. We bring to you weekly reports and expert analysis of the actions, policies, and economic initiatives of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN. Our expert analysis this week is on the decision of the CBN Monetary Policy Committee to leave all policy parameters unchanged, as well as other economic matters. Here is our interview with an economist and the CEO of Global Analytics Consulting Limited, Dr. Tokwe Fashua. Dr. Tokwe Fashua, thank you for joining us on the program today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now, central banks across the world are normalizing monetary policies, but the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria rose from its two-day meeting on January the 25th to retain the interest rate at 11.5%, along with other key monetary policy parameters. Do you share the sentiment of maintaining the status quo?
The way I look at it is that they have no options but to do what they've done. And sometimes you begin to wonder, maybe we actually need a monetary policy committee, or if things will ever change. So they're caught between the rock and a hard place. If the central bank increases a monetary policy rate, they're giving an indication to commercial banks to increase lending rates. And if they do that, that means they're trying to slow down production. Whereas that's a way of slowing down inflation, but productivity will slow. Manufacturers will complain, and then they'd ask you if, this is the next thing we're supposed to be doing. If they reduce interest rates right now, what they're doing is to say that they want inflation to climb. And you can see that already, without even doing that, Nigeria's inflation has moved from 14.5% thereabout to 15% in the last quarter. So if you go and reduce interest rate right now, you're going to see a scenario where you're dealing with inflation at 16, 17%, which is a place we're coming from that we're hoping not to go back to. So beyond having a sentiment, the issue is the very hard reality of where we have found ourselves, and that we have fired almost all our monetary policy bullets, if you ask me, because the central bank monetary policy has been carrying this economy for quite a while now, to the extent that some would even say that the central bank has delved into some fiscal policy areas. For example, all the interventions that they're doing with farmers and what have you, as well as other sectors in the economy. So the central bank has done enough, if you ask me. I think what next needs to happen is for the other parts of the economy, the fiscal aspect, to kick in. What are we doing in terms of consumption, investment, government expenditure, export and import? How is government bringing in taxation or other revenues as well? What plans does government have for the superstructure of the economy, so that we can perhaps reboot this economy and start on a fresh slate? I think that's the next thing we probably should be looking at.
All right, talking about rebooting the economy, what can we do to forestall this eventuality? Because as major developed economies are hiking their interest rates, there is a likelihood that foreign direct investment inflow will be affected. How can this be managed?
In the first place, the thing is that when they hike interest rates in those developed economies, what they want is they want inflows into their economy. They want people to come and invest in their stock markets, in their financial markets, to earn better interest rates. So investors usually will compare between the yields that they will get on investments in developed economies compared with developing economies where you have higher risk but higher return. So by the time you narrow that a bit, when the margin between developed and developing economy is not that much, then it makes sense for investors, the major investors in the world, who are sitting on a chest of money to invest in developed economies like New York Stock Exchange, New York markets, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and what have you. But the first thing I think one needs to look at is that we don't usually get a lot of foreign direct investment in Nigeria, unfortunately, because the other issues beyond interest rates are at play. If you're going to get good amounts of direct investment, then of course your security has to be tight. Nobody will come and place investments in a place where they are afraid to come and even inspect what their money is doing. They want to have free access. They want to be unafraid to come to your country. We haven't been able to assure that in the last few years. In fact, call it a decade plus, or even more than that. I can't actually say that we've actually been very big on foreign direct investment. Many times, and what I mean by foreign direct investment is investment that stays. What we usually get is foreign portfolio investment, even when the going was good. In the Obasanjo days and the Yar'Adua days and so on. And partly in the Jonathan days under Okonjo-Iweala as coordinating minister, what we got were foreign portfolio investors. And I've seen scenarios where central bankers and other people who run the economy would actually praise foreign portfolio investment, which are investments in the bond market or in the stock market and so on. But we know as economists that those investments are what they call hot money, because these investments don't wait for anybody. When they want to move, they move. And when they move in droves, and they leave you in a lodge. And these guys are very, very smart people who will ensure that they never make a loss in your country.
All right, let's look at
I tend to try to downplay that. I kind of downplay to say, what are we also doing with domestic investment? If we are taking our own money and heading abroad, why would we expect anyone to come here? What are we doing with security levels in the country and all the issues we have? I think that those are some of the things. And I would say that we should try not to chase foreign portfolio investment, FPIs, for whatever reasons, all right? Investors don't need to be convinced to come to your country. They see that they'll get better yields by coming into your market, okay? But we should fix our security issues so that we can get direct investment, establishment of industry. That's what China did way trainable. And of course, in the globalization game, they gained because companies moved from the West into China, established, and they employed a whole lot of Chinese people. And in doing that, technology was transferred, and China was this idea of chasing quick investments and just quick dollars any which way. That is not my thing.
All right, let's move on to the production drive. The Central Bank of Nigeria has been driving this trend that there should be more companies going into local production, and they came up with the 100 for 100 PPP. How do you think, in spite of the headwinds, that policy would impact on the economy and the non-oil diversification drive?
Okay, well, in the first place, I think in the last budget presentation, I think I happened to have attended. The minister was also in sitting. And of course, they also mentioned the fact that the economy has been fairly diversified away from oil, crude oil, However, I made it clear that it is important to look beyond oil, non-oil, and look at proper diversification of the economy. The minister did mention Egypt and she mentioned how Egypt is actually one of the perhaps the best performing economy in Africa for now, getting a lot of foreign direct. Is getting the highest foreign direct investment in Africa presently as we speak. In spite of COVID, that country has been able to live beyond COVID and so on. And what makes Egypt tick is domestic consumption, because the people believe in their country, they spend in their country, and they're producing more and more within the country that the people are investing and are purchasing and so on. So that's very, very important that we look beyond this dichotomy of oil and non-oil and think about proper diversification, full diversification of the economy. And I think that you may not be able to see this in any textbook, but what I've noticed so far is that the most diversified economies are also basically, the economies that are most self-sufficient. The most self-sufficient economy. So the most diversified economy in the world, according to my studies, is United States of America. And that country is the most self-sufficient. China comes maybe a distant second. And one of the things they do in the US, they tell you that $1 of taxpayers' money, 1 cent of taxpayers' money will not be spent, on and given to any foreign company, except they cannot find an American company that can do the work. So that's how strict they are with ensuring that they encourage their own local industry. And if you flew on any American airline, United or Delta, whatever, just look at everything they give you. You'll see, fruit juice from some farm somewhere in Minnesota or wherever, some rural area, family farm. They're very, very strict about that. So we should think about, proper diversification. I was at the African Development Bank meeting in 2014 or thereabout when they got 50, and a number of Nigerian people came and they talked about oil and non-oil, and some of the other African countries were wondering what they were talking about, because it's not everybody that lives in this oil versus non-oil realm that we do. So let's not kid ourselves. If oil is not doing well, or as well as we think it will do in a certain period, and because of that, the other non-oil things that we do moves up, and then we're doing well. No, we should be doing a lot better. We should be driving a lot more productivity in every other sector in the economy. And of course, so the 100 for 100 is what it is. CBN, like I said before, has moved beyond the realm of monetary policy into fiscal. And that's because the central bank governor, even when he came in some years back, did say that he would target employment generation as one of his areas. And I support that, because we cannot stick to the traditional orthodox functions of the central bank when the economy is dying. When the economy is dying and there you are, you're chasing inflation or chasing, inflation targeting and interest rates and all of that, that will not work. So I think the central bank is doing the right thing. The 100 for 100 is just one of the initiatives. There are so many other initiatives. There's TIES, for example, which was launched some time back, which targets entrepreneurship at university and polytechnic level. There are so many things that are doing. Of course, clearly, we must continue to drive productivity. Is the way forward. I personally believe that Nigeria should be a high growth, high inflation economy. Is the best we can do now. Of course, our growth target is 4% for the new year. The IMF says it should be 2.5%, which is basically I interpret to be that they believe that we wouldn't do anything different this year, which is unfortunate if that's what happens. But we should be targeting double-digit inflation. And if you're targeting double-digit inflation, meaning that everybody is getting jobs, people are producing, people are buying, and all of that, certainly inflation will go up. So that's the kind of economy we should be targeting. Forget inflation for now. Let people find jobs. Let people produce. Let's produce using local resources as much as we can, the goods and services that we need in our country that will, let's spend locally. Let's drive domestic consumption locally, in everything. Let's shut down a little bit and see how it works out. I think that's the only way. Organic growth is the way forward for us.
All right. I was about to mention the forecast of the IMF, putting the growth rate of Nigerian economy at 2.7%, but you already mentioned that. So I'll just ask this question to wrap up. It is not really an economic question, but you've been talking so much about driving productivity and encouraging local consumption. But it will appear that a lot of Nigerians are so used to foreign goods that consuming something produced locally is an issue. How do you think this can be changed?
Well, yeah, like I told you, what they did in the US and is everywhere. We start from leadership, we start from government. Okay, the private sector, of course, we expect that they have latitude to do whatever they want to do with their money. Okay, but there was a time, even in the private sector, in some of these countries I mentioned, that they had to drag in the private sector with the government agenda and say, guys, this is what we want now. So the American economy went into what they call the Great Depression in the whole of 1930s, from 1929 into 1939. This economy was in the Great Depression, and many of the symptoms of the Great Depression lives with us today in Nigeria: high unemployment, high crime rates, high illiteracy, poverty, hunger, and all of that. Which is what we have been used to here for as long as I can remember. And when the Pearl Harbor was bombed in 7th of December 1941, the American government joined the war effort on the 8th of December 1941. And by April 1942, they made a law that nobody should buy any new car or sell any new car in the US. And that continued from April 1942 to December 1944. And all the big motor producing companies were recalibrated for the war effort. So you can see they recalibrated, and so instead of producing cars, they were producing fighter jets, and the Americans were selling so many of these to the people who were fighting in Europe, and that was how America actually got out of the Great Depression. That's why the other things they have done, Roosevelt had done the New Deal and all of that. They tried to employ a lot of people. All of that did not quite take them out of the Great Depression. And since that time, America has become the dominant power in the world and has dictated the pace. And I say that Nigerians should know, and leaders should know, that we're in a war situation. And when you're in a war situation, there's a need for you. In an economic war situation, we've been in this war situation for as long as I can see and remember. And so we need drastic policies. We need policies that really, if you like, some would call it a shock therapy. Something that actually jars us out of our reverie. And so to a large extent, we need that production, and we need to lock down. We need to lock down some things. I would have thought that government would have a moratorium on foreign spending, even foreign travel where necessary. But unfortunately, I don't think that the present government is able to live up to that expectation. So we probably would look at what the next government is going to do. But all of us, we have to, like they will say on the streets in Nigeria, all of us, we have to calm down. All of us have to calm down in this country. Let government understand that in the United Kingdom, they produce Jaguar, they produce Range Rover. That's what their government people, that's what they drive officially. In the United States, you will never see an American official driving a Toyota or a Honda, never, with official funds. He can buy it personally if he likes it. The president of the US drives a Cadillac. The president of the UK the prime minister drives a Jaguar or a Range Rover. The president of France drives a Citroën or Renault. The president of China drives a Kikong. Kikong is a Chinese production. Okay, the one in Italy would probably drive a Fiat or whatever it is they produce there. And I did the research on that, and that's how it is. So when you see government officials here, you say, I can never touch sin. I can never touch a pan. I mean, it's just ridiculous. That means that we don't know the situation that we are in. And of course, if you don't know where you are in and you are not telling yourself the truth about your situation, you keep on making the same mistake. If government can show that example beyond rhetoric and just mere mouth, then the rest of the country will queue it. And it's just logical, and it's just it's just in our own favor for us to do the right thing and support local industries, and from there we'll see glory. And for us to also be ready to produce more locally. I've also said we should experiment more. Let our young people experiment more. Okay, they will make mistakes, but we should support them. Support beyond the successes that they've recorded in entertainment, in music, and all of that. We need to now begin to produce things ourselves. And that's very important. Let's look around us, whatever it is that we need, that we think about local alternatives, we can do it. I believe so. And we have to start now.
All right, I see a brighter future for Nigeria if our leaders can act on all of these things that you have listed and that we have discussed on this program today. I must thank you very much for your insights and your time, Dr. Tope Fashua.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me.
Nigeria is a rich nation of green land, rich resources, countless crops and commodities sufficient to feed and provide a means of livelihood for her teeming population. Chin up, Nigeria, the giant of Africa. Exciting times are here. We can be self-reliant and grow our economy if we work together to explore our potential. It takes a whole nation. Let us get involved. Buy Nigerian to grow Nigeria.
That's all from the CBN this week. Report unresolved banking issues to the CBN Consumer Protection Department through the email address cpd@cbn.gov.ng with relevant documents. Call the CBN Contact Center using the phone line +234 700 22 55 226. Local call rates may apply. Send your comments and contributions to the email address from the cbn@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and of course Twitter for updates and uploaded episodes of the program. We invite you to join us again next time. I'm William Dada. Stay safe. Bye for now.